Tonight, we'll talk about last week's Strange New Worlds and what we thought about it, as well as 4 episodes of Star Trek Deep Space Nine. But first, we're going to catch up on the latest pop culture news regarding Lucasfilm. All this coming up right now on The Writer Brothers. And welcome back to The Writer Brothers, your Tuesday night home for all things Star Trek and Lucasfilm drama. We have got a packed show to get to tonight, and quick shout out, of course, to Skoglioten, wherever you are. Hope you're good this evening. Miss you, but hey, I don't pay you guys enough to drag you on screen against your will just yet. Nor ever. That's... Nobody is. We're actually losing money, actually, if you really want to get down to it. But that's a breakdown for another time. Right now, what we need to do is get right into, well, I was hoping real quick to start with the Green Lantern news. It's a little soft, you know. Let's let everybody get in their seats. Everybody's gonna gather in. You know, they're gonna see the Lucasfilm news, and you know, some people it's you know, we're probably one of the few shows that actually does manage to start within a couple minutes of on time. I mean, it's a new concept for YouTube as well, and so it's like, you know. Yeah, well, and, you know, I think YouTubers, we could use some organization if we want to network and plan streams, you know, more efficiently. Then we could probably come up with schedules and more fans. But, hey, you know, y'all know how to reach me. Yeah. All right, so this just dropped. This puts me in a little bit of a conflict because I really don't like Warner Bros. Oh, free advertising for this information, of course, is now being brought to you by Aviva Direct Auto Insurance. Beat the clock with a 3-minute online auto quote. I've never actually heard of that hero, so I'm curious to... You mean DC? Oh. Okay. Okay. Oh, right.
Incarnated.
Cool. So that was a good first practice run.
Oh, okay.
So I totally forgot to mute the audio. The day will come when I get this show right, but as we
That
say
is not
every
today.
time, it is not today.
Okay.
This is why we will never be moving the stream out of alpha phase. We're forever in beta.
We're early access.
Early access, eternal. Yeah, EAE.
Okay.
Yeah, that's on us. I do apologize, everybody, for wasting your time there. Just having you listen to our wonderful background noise, or excuse me, background music, I should say, provided to us, of course, by Morality on Spotify. If you're looking for copyright-free music that is good for, well, streams like this or whatever you need, hit him up. He does great work.
Okay, so
back to now this, because I screwed up, of course, now I had to restart. We have a new advertisement. This information is now brought to you by Dove. Beautifully. Anyway, Superman Legacy has Nathan Fillion, so I am a Nathan Fillion fan. I've always liked everything he's been in. I never actually watched all of Castle, but the episodes I caught I liked, but for me it was still still not over Firefly.
Yeah, I think it's interesting they have him playing Guy Gardner as opposed to Hal Jordan.
Yeah, I did like that he reprised his role as Malcolm Reynolds in Halo, playing Sergeant Buck, so that was awesome. As well as you had Wash and you also had Jane, but they weren't really playing those characters. They were playing different characters. They were voiced by Adam Baldwin and of course Alan Tudyk. Man, that was that's the best Halo game ever. It's ODST for obvious reasons. So yeah, this is cool little news, but it's Warner Bros. And I'm still not happy about the Flash, but at the same time, I don't know. I don't know.
Well, we'll see what happens from it, right? I mean, I'm willing to give this a try, right?
Right.
I mean, they're on thin ice with me. They're certainly on thin ice. But, if they don't bring back, the actor who I refuse to name for the Flash, because I just don't want to give him any more oxygen.
That's it.
Yeah. And, if they do a decent job, they've got somebody who looks the part for Superman. They got somebody who looks the part for Lois, in my opinion. Nathan Fillion playing a Green Lantern, especially Guy Gardner, sounds like a good choice. And a fun choice too, right? Because Guy Gardner has always been kind of the bad boy goofball of the Green Lantern Corps, so that works well. I really like Isabella here for playing Hawkgirl. She's got this kind of exotic quality to her face that would work well depending on which background they go with Hawkgirl, that she's either a alien come to this planet that flies around, or she's the reincarnated Egyptian pharaohess. That could work. And Edie Gathering, and I apologize if I'm pronouncing the name wrong, he actually looks as a really good choice for Mr. Terrific. I've caught his work before. I've liked what he does. For those who don't know, he was actually on House for a while.
Okay.
And he was fantastic on it. I think this could work out well. They seem to be making solid choices for characters.
All right. Well, with that, I do believe it is time to move to the updates for what has been
We're
going
gonna
on
go
at
full Lucasfilm.
Lucasfilm. If you've been following our breaking news live streams, then you know that we are basically all in at this point for the fate of Kathleen Kennedy not looking super great one way or another. Whether it's, she gets fired, gets a window seat, it's just, she just needs to not be involved in projects one way or another. But Corion, why don't you go ahead and take this one and explain where we're going to start from, and we'll go from there.
So this image is from Stephanie Janisex, who's a wonderful friend of ours. Pablo Hidalgo recently tweeted out today, leadership involves meetings. Just a note to say I am not and have no interest in being in a leadership position, which, wouldn't be a big deal, except for we know that he has a position at Lucasfilm, which this sort of comment heavily implies that there is, in fact, a meeting coming up. And, a lot of people have been saying, well, this is going to be the meeting. This is going to be the meeting that sees the end of KK and the dawning of a new day for Star Wars. And, I've been intrigued by that idea, but not really sold on it. Because while I would absolutely love to see that meeting go down and it be somewhat of a decimation here, our friend here, Bob Iger, also just announced that Thursday morning, so it would be the day after everyone has been told the big meeting is happening, Thursday morning at the earliest possible time slot, he's going to be going on CNBC. What they're talking about? Well, it hasn't been said. But if I was the CEO and I was making major leadership changes at one of my studios, I would probably want to get out ahead of the narrative. So this is another piece of the puzzle here, right? And it's all leading to something. And I suspect that Wednesday, whatever it is, it's going to be big. And when we see it happen, hopefully our inside sources that have been, pretty reasonable about getting information are going to let us know. And just for those who are watching, be aware that if the Kathleen Kennedy regime falls, the party is going to be right here.
This is why the Ahsoka trailer dropped today.
Yeah.
Well, you just reported on it because so they're doing both simultaneously, which I figured might be an option. Because I know I initially said or suggested that they would wait till after all of this goes down. But that's just one possible strategy. Instead, they decide they're basically trying to get Ahsoka out into the spotlight because they don't know. Yeah. I don't think they're confident with how the fans are going to react. And so they're instead trying to soften the blow while getting people excited for sort of the youngest legacy character that, was ever added to Star Wars, because I mean Lucas obviously approved of the character and liked the character, and so I mean, I get that Ahsoka isn't for everybody, but the thing is, it's okay to not like other characters for personal reasons, but that doesn't mean that the character is bad. Ahsoka, in my opinion, is one of the best fan-created characters that's ever been put into the universe.
I mean, look, regardless of what you think of Ahsoka, I mean, just talking strategy here, Bob Iger's strategy has always been a give them the razzle-dazzle over here so they don't look over here, right? He's always been about misdirection. So, even in investor calls, he will talk up one section of the company that is succeeding and then just kind of quickly mention and gloss over this other section that's not doing so well. It's like, hey guys, our park numbers are great. Look at how many people we've got in. This is the demographics that have really changed in a wonderful way. We're so happy about that. Oh, by the way, our last movie tanked. but look at all the stuff we've got going on in the parks, and we're talking about opening this and that and the other thing. That's what he does.
Right, and that to me just sounds like if I'm really hearing all of this stuff, it really sounds like Bob Iger isn't good at his job. And the reason I say that is because like he's in charge. This is his house, right? If you take responsibility for a house, whether or not it's the largest international conglomerate in the world or an entertainment studio, you know, it's your house. And it's your responsibility to clean that house and keep that house clean. And Corian, I love that you were like, oh yeah, the sales over at Disneyland are killing it. They're not. They're not. They literally have priced out 90% of America because they actually believe America's GDP averages and say that the average American makes somewhere between 200 and 400K a year. But that's only because we have billionaires messing with our average. And Bob Iger, owner of the Disney house, responsible party for the Disney house, keeps thinking that he's going to make more money as he keeps raising all these prices. And then all of his products that are supposed to make those prices worth it are flopping, which means that like, this guy doesn't know what good entertainment is. He doesn't know what good media is. If he did, he would have dropped Kathleen like the bad sack of potatoes she was years ago. And he's all like, well, I can't do that because I don't want to make it look like I made a bad decision. Well, this is an even worse one. This is like finding out you have cancer and then ignoring your doctors until it's stage 4 and then going, guys, I didn't know. But you did, Bob, you did know. You always knew. You watched.
The doctors didn't tell me anything. The doctors didn't say anything. No warning.
Oh, okay.
It's the doctor's fault.
Okay, so normally I would be all over Bob, but let's cut him like 2 inches of slack here and say this. Bob knows he's not a creative, okay? He is not the kind of person that's going to come up with the ideas that is going to do things. He does, and what he has been very good at in the past was buying other companies' creative ideas to use as Disney's. Let's be honest, that's what he did, okay?
He didn't do it with any of them. Name one recent Disney purchase that was better than before Disney bought it.
Oh, I agree. But what I'm saying is so we were in a situation where Disney had nothing, and then they bought something just to keep the company afloat, really, okay? Look, what Disney needs at this point is they need creatives like, I don't know, Jon Favreau, as an example, right? In charge of the studios, making the creative decisions, and then having somebody like Bob, who is a businessman, going and being the other side of the coin and saying, yes, I love this creative idea, but you need to do it for half the budget. Right?
Or even better, man, to me, it's all about leadership. Why is Disney failing? It's because they hired somebody to run Disney like it's a bank. Yeah. And look, it's become a bank. Like, our rate of returns have depreciated beyond oblivion. Our interest dead in the water, and Disney's still technically making money because their ROI is insane. And why is their ROI insane? Because they've been running a pyramid scheme where they keep taking from creative, putting it into their investment portfolio, and then firing all the creative. And then they go, why isn't anybody enjoying this? And it's like, because nobody is making this fun. Like, you've got all these people at Disney trying to get us to hate watch their crap movies, and then their leadership is like, hey guys, the next one will work. But it hasn't. None of them have worked. At some point, the leader needs to realize that they are leading the company down a dark, dark pit of terribleness and take some onus and then actually formulate a plan. But all he's been doing is like, no, I'm just going to buy another one to assuage my last year's failures. And he's never assuaged any of his failures, only made more. And then now he's trying to be a wizard and tell us like, Ahsoka's coming, but I'm also Kathleen, but Ahsoka's coming. And it's like, dude, You don't get to play these games anymore. You don't get to be a magician after you have been the worst con artist of all time and then just start saying you're a magician because now you fired one person. Bob, you're the one that needs to go because you won't take responsibility. You won't own that Kathleen was a bad choice. You're literally trying to cover it up with 800 other things while Kathleen was trying to cover up her work with 800 other things. And now
there's also
rugs
another
on top of rugs on top of moldy carpet, and the mold's coming to roost.
I would argue there's also another component of this, and this is ultimately part of the reason why I have... Okay, hear me out on this first, okay? I think part of the problem is we don't have creatives anymore that have life experience before they become creatives, okay? Hear me out on this. We've got... Let's take 3 people just off the top of my head. Robert Heinlein, DC Fontana, and let's go with the creator of Star Trek, Roddenberry, okay? Heinlein and Roddenberry were, Heinlein was a naval officer, Roddenberry was an Air Force pilot during the war, okay? Both of them during wars. DC Fontana worked in a stenography pool for non-Hollywood situations multiple times, okay? They didn't live in the industry, right? They didn't go to school to be writers. They went to school to do the jobs that they were supposed to do and wound up becoming writers after they gained life experience. What happens now is people go to universities. They only get the university's opinion of the world, which... You know, I mean, you can argue about whether universities are actually teaching anything these days or just providing contrary opinion to the general publicly accepted fact, okay? But that's all they get exposed to, and then they get put into these writer positions that they don't have any real-world experience to draw on. They don't have any situations where they've lived, truly lived, and can take those experiences and pass them on, right? Take a look at... Roddenberry's work is when you start watching TOS and realizing that he is talking like like the crew is talking like they're on an aircraft carrier or something like that, you start to understand why, right? When Heinlein starts talking about, operations of Marines on duty and whatnot, you start to understand why. Because they were around these people. Because they understood the lifestyle these people are living, right? Because they could see humorous or sorrowful or whatever experiences these people were having. DC Fontana writes great human interest stuff. Why? Because she spent a huge amount of time around regular everyday humans, right? The writers we have now in Hollywood were always writers. And they were always writers in a system that allowed them to just write anything regardless of whether it was good or not. The writing teachers were more concerned about formatting than they were for genuine, believable, realistic, engaging storytelling. So the business guys don't have the creatives they need backing them up to be able to make a creative business work right now. That's part of the problem, right?
Well, yeah, and I think it's a lot of this idea that you're gonna get life experience if you move to Hollywood, and it's yeah, you will if you do it very independently and really, really risk it all for a few years and try. But most of the people that are going to Hollywood to make it, they've got daddy's money, they've got mommy's money, and they're just walking on in because they've got daddy's contacts and mommy's contacts, and they just keep walking on stage. And it's yes, you are a human who has done nothing. Right. You've lived nowhere. You've tried nothing because everything you do gets handed to you. Everything you do gets worked out with you until everybody around you goes, "You're a good cookie, buddy. Thank you." Yeah. And that's awesome. That's the way life technically should eventually get to, but it's not the life we're living. That's not the life. Even Roddenberry wrote that's what was going on Earth, and then never showed you Earth because he was nobody wants to see that. Nobody wants to pretend that everything's perfect and wants to watch utopia over and over and over again. Like, one, it's never been realized, so like nobody in creative can be like, I know how to do utopia because I've never done it before, except, you know, my life was utopian-esque because my parents gave me everything and I only was scared because I watched the news and it told me to be scared. And it's like the rest of us were scared because we were actually living paycheck to paycheck, or we were living parents' paycheck to parents' paycheck while we were underage and incapable of getting a job. So we know what that fear actually feels like, whereas a lot of these people only know that fear tertiary, or, you know, all these other levels before they even imagine fear. And then you get guys like Bob Iger that are in charge and they go, the only person I trust to write a good Disney movie is somebody who lived a perfect Disney life and never actually suffered what Cinderella suffered. That person knows how to write a real heart-catching thriller. That person knows how to run this whole world. And it's like, no. That person's going to get bullied out of the room by the director, and then the director is going to be like, oh, I didn't have any good writers, so that's why it flopped. And it's like, at some point, a leader's got to be a leader. At some point, a leader's got to take responsibility for why his team sucks. And Bob, your team sucks. Like, as coach of Disney, you are worst in the nation because you can't come out with a new property. You keep rerunning old properties, and all of your old properties keep flopping worse than their originals with their original price points when people were a lot poorer and there were less of us with less access to these movies. And you still can't even get back to the normal number. Like, come on, man. Who is actually leading any of this? Who's actually in charge? Like, if you don't want to be in charge, don't be CEO. And if you do want to be in charge, don't blame your children for your failures. You hired them. You are responsible for everything under the sun.
Or at the very least, discipline them appropriately. If they if they screw up, hold their feet to the fire. Right? Look, I'm not
on the firing line. Nobody is at threat of getting murdered over any of this. Nobody is at threat of taking over the country over this. So this is why discipline is important more than anything, because if your kids, Bob, ran our military, we would get run through the ringer every single day, and we would even finish a single deployment.
We would look like Russia's army right now, which is the second greatest army in Russia.
Nemesis of Eden says, been lurking. Have an amazing day, all. Hey, Nemesis of Eden, give Scogli our regards.
Hey.
And, yeah. No, that's some pretty good. I think, John, you've said enough about it at this point, and you're just, it's, I agree with everything you pretty much said, because it's like, if you want to save face at this time, it's time to start admitting all the mistakes and failed properties. And the biggest mistake, of course, was blaming us, the fans. You know, I'm not. It's really just not just blaming the fans, but then dividing the fan base in the process too. Like, I just recently had a brush up with some idiot on Twitter who was very much behaving un-Star Trek like towards people because they're still, just have problems with disagreements about certain properties of Star Trek. And it's like, look, you're not required to like all of Star Trek. It's okay if you hate the original series, that's your problem. But I'm not going to hate you for it. Or just, it's dumb to get so divided like this. And, well, this happened because of the tabloids pushing all the nonsense, the fandom menace, the whole, it's the fans that are to blame. It's because you don't like being taught lessons of life. And it's like, no, we don't like being told that nothing has changed and that everything's going bad when, the 90s and early 2000s proved that we're all capable of just living our lives in peace. And that's pretty much all anybody wants at this point. So
this is the best the world's ever been. So for people to come in and be like, no, nobody on earth knows how to actually be a loving, caring person. We're going to start with that story again. As if we didn't spend the last 2,000 years just trying to get to being able to be neighbors, right? And nailing it finally. Like, for the most part, most of our neighbors are not a problem. That's the first time in history. There was a time when literally other states would invade your state. And that's not a thing anymore. Like, that's insane. What's going on in Ukraine is literally the worst war we've ever seen. And it's not that bad. Like, we have
That is a discussion for another show.
I mean,
Yeah.
in casualty numbers, in terms of weaponry available.
Discussion for another show.
For sure.
So, moving on to Strange New Worlds.
Right, and that's what I was leading to.
Despite some upcoming rumors of tomorrow night's episode, as well as an episode 9 musical, they show they can do a TOS True to Form episode, and that is what I felt was this one. And so, real quick, just the non-spoiler portion for me is this was a really good episode overall. I felt it was a solid 7, very relevant to things going on in the world. And so, that's where you were. Okay, so John, why don't you go ahead and take back over? Yeah, I had to find out.
No, you're good. So this whole episode for me is what Bob is like Bob, what I said earlier, here's the proof of the pudding. Because Kurtzman, I don't know who's writing these episodes, but whoever he picked is finally like actually listening to some of us. Because a lot of the complaints that I've had are through a lot of time of learning how to write and having a lot of time on trying to figure out what a good story arc and story circle looks like. And now all of a sudden season 2 of S&W is actually like fulfilling a lot of the things that I've been learning. And one of the biggest things is like with this episode, so far, I have actually been watching S&W for myself. Last year when we were watching it, I was watching it a lot for this show. Like, it was a legitimate, I have to watch that one again. But now I'm like, no, S&W's on, I'm watching that episode and I'm enjoying it. And I actually had to watch this one 2 separate days because I went to press play and then everybody was talking and everybody was trying to live their lives in the house. And I was like, okay, I'm not watching this. I want to watch this on my time in quiet space where I can enjoy it. And that's how good this season's been. So Bob, Kurtzman's doing it. Call him, ask him what he did. This is what good writing looks like. And it's not even that different. If you look at the difference between season 1 and season 2, it's just cohesive writing. As far as visuals go, they're about the same. As far as adventures go, they're about the same. But as far as cohesive writing goes, season 2 is actually good and season 1 tried.
Yeah. H. Marie, your thoughts, non-spoiler overview for Strange New Worlds this week.
I enjoyed it, but unfortunately my memory has forced me to forget most of it, so I'm going to wait till the spoilers so I can actually remember the episode. Sorry, guys.
It's okay. It happens to the best of us. So, here's what
and for
I'm
those
gonna...
lurking in the background, if you did watch Strange New Worlds and want to give your rating out of 7 or out of 10, we'll interpret us to figure out what your 7 is. We like our 7-point system here because that's what we want to use. And but we also are capable of speaking many different point systems here. So we'll just do our best to figure out what it is you want. So I'm, of course, a solid 7 out of 7. And then, if anyone else wants to type it in the chat, that would be awesome. Sorry, Coriel, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, this is probably about a 6 out of 7 for me. This felt a lot like a solid Star Trek episode to me. There were minor nitpicky missteps. It wasn't perfect to me, but this was about as close as I think I'm gonna get. And you know what? I'm actually really happy about that, right? Because if it was perfect, I mean, I wouldn't have much to say on this show. But look, they're finding their feet. If they keep on this trajectory, I think we're really going to have something here. And I'm really hoping they stay with it because this was well done. We had an A plot that tied into the B plot that made cohesive, logical sense. The concepts involved all worked, right? The people involved were, reasonable in their motivations. There wasn't anything particularly glaring that was wrong here. The tabula rasa moments played out well. All in all, I mean, this was not terrible. And I'm loving that it's not terrible. Like, if they can do this for, like, what is this season? 7 more episodes? Then I will be able to say, yep, you had a solid, decent series of Trek. Kurtzman, you finally did it. It took you, I don't know how many years now, but you finally did it. And, I will 100% give him the kudos he's due if he can stick the landing on this season now.
Yeah, that's a huge if at this point.
Right?
This is episode 3, and all 3 of these episodes so far have been good in their own right, but I haven't seen the through line yet for the season. So if there supposedly was one in these first 3 episodes, it better actually have some cake behind it, because I haven't, when we were watching which one was it, the Apple one, the first one we did on Apple, with the it felt like a mystery box.
Oh, the
Severance?
Severance.
And when we were watching Severance, Corian was able to tell us where we should be at every episode. This is episode 4, it should be exposition dump. This is episode 5, we should be hitting the climax.
Yep.
As much as I'm enjoying S&W, I'm not finding that thread yet.
I don't necessarily think we're going to find a thread like that with this sort of series, because this series is supposed to be, the episodes should stand alone, right? The episode should be able to take us on a different encounter, a different event in each episode. They don't necessarily all need to tie together in a massive meta plot. In fact, I'd actually be happy if we took 3 or 4 episodes off of a meta plot and just did a monster/problem of the week episode, provided they're well done. Right?
And that's, when you say it like that, honestly, it brings a lot of hope, because one of my favorite things about sitcoms on NBC or whatever, like New Girl or The Office or one of those ones, the reason why those shows are so great is because we're watching the characters grow.
Yeah.
No idea which way they're going to grow. There is no through line through any of the seasons. We just know that the characters are going to grow. They're going to experience the life that they're living. And that is exactly what I've wanted from Star Trek.
Yeah.
Because we don't get that enough, where it constantly I need to watch the next episode to make sure I'm up to date on everything, or I'm going to miss out on Game of Thrones. And that was fun. But I feel like if every show is doing that, it gets exhausting. So, Corian, I actually do hope you're right. I hope this whole season doesn't tie together past the fact that it's the crew of the Starship Enterprise.
Yeah.
That would actually be nice.
I mean, don't get me wrong. There could be major events that they build to, right? But if they build to some major events and they've dropped little hints along the way that I haven't picked up on, I'm okay with that, right? I'm totally okay with that. But right now, look, we're getting character development in these episodes, right? We've gotten a crew member per week that has gotten significant character development. That's a good thing, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Because we need to identify with this ensemble cast so that when they do go through hardship, when there is a major galaxy-shifting event, we care about the people that are going through that event, right? Let me ask you this. If it was just starting out, right? Imagine, if you will, we're seeing the series and we don't have really, you're watching this and I don't know, the helmsman
subscribe.
gets shot. If the helmsman gets shot, right, and is dying in sickbay, would you care? But after this episode,
Yeah.
if she got shot and was dying in sickbay, and the doctor and Nurse Chapel are frantically working to keep her alive, would you care now?
Oh, dude, yeah, exactly. And this, you're so right, and that's why I love this season so far, is because that is the part that I feel like season 1 was missing, Discovery was missing, all of it is like, a lot of people just assumed we liked the entire ship of the Star Trek Enterprise because they were the entire crew. But like, I always remember fans making fun of other fans for not liking their favorite character above the other character that they do like. And that's my favorite thing about superheroes, is like, you can like Iron Man and I can like Superman, but we both love superheroes. And that's what Star Trek was before. And it was losing it, and this is bringing it back. This is like, I didn't like the helmsman in season 1. Right. I thought they were trying way too hard to be happy-go-lucky, but then in this episode, now I actually kind of get it. Like, they are just a person trying to keep their spirits up, and when life gets hard, that's the best they can do. And her way of doing that, just, I fly the ship. I fly the ship. Like, sure, it's childish, but as somebody who has gone on adventures where you lose your mind, trust me, I fly the ship is one of the few mantras that can help you through those bad trips.
Yeah, I think we're going to have to go to spoiler alert at this point, because if we go any further, we're
we've been at spoiler alert.
Okay.
Yeah.
I didn't hear the alarm bell, so.
Yeah, I know. I need to come up with there's so much stuff I need to start improving with this show, and I'll get around to it eventually. But yeah, H. Marie, what were your thoughts now that we're in spoiler territory for this episode? Because then I think we got to get going to DS9 here soon, because we got a lot of DS9 to get through. Holy.
Well, my memory loss is actually quite in tune with the
episode.
But I pulled up the quick little synopsis to remind myself. Yeah, no, I really liked it, but it was interesting seeing the ways that people learned how to cope with essentially losing themselves every morning, I think was the consensus.
Yeah.
Or something to that effect. But, I mean, there's actually people out there who do wake up every morning. We've seen movies about it, 50 First Dates, one of my favorites, where, memory loss is a thing. But having it stretch all the way up to the ship and affecting the ship and potentially taking out the entirety of the crew was definitely a good twist.
Yeah. I feel like part of it too was take a look at how each of them dealt with it, right? Chapel was frantically working to try to come up with a cure, right? Spock was trying to logic his way out of the problem and, come up with a way for him to identify where, what to do when, right? And then you've got this, this ensign, who flies the ship, Ortega going like, I don't know what the hell to do. Because to her, everything is her own personal ego. And having that ego washed away terrified her. And we got to see that play out. And that said more about the character than anything else, right? The subtext of her freaking out and going to hide in her room said more than anything she could have had in a dialogue scene with somebody else on the crew about who she is. And the fact that she picked the thing, I fly the ship, as her core, no, this is what I am right now. And this is how I'm going to get through this. Also says a lot about her, because at the end of the day, she identifies as, Starfleet's best pilot, right? Or Starfleet's best pilot. Whether she is or not is questionable, but the fact that that's how she identifies, the fact that that's how she gets up every morning, and when she puts on the uniform, goes forward with that, it says a lot about her, right? And I mean, take a look at the crew on the ground, right? You know, we had Singh there. You know, her first instinct was to fight, right? Mbenga's natural instinct was to heal. And Pike's natural instinct was to organize everybody. You know, his instinct was to lead.
Yeah, and I think, you know, and then we can actually, there's a bit of, you know, religious allegory that can be applied to it as well. The whole concept of, you know, oh, I scratched these names out, which means, you know, there's people that died and I don't remember the pain, and I, you know, kind of, sort of, a little only totally related to that from events of my own life. And so it was, I've had some debate with other spiritual mystic types that think that, you know, after this life, I'll stick with the Unitarian neutral language, that there's going to be purification. You know, whether you look at degeneracy as sinful or whatever, it's the whole idea is that, you know, we're going to be made better, made pure, and move on and ascend, so to speak. And so the issue that I have with some of those concepts are the wiping away the memory of this existence. And to me, that defeats the whole purpose of life entirely, because I feel this is supposed to be our learning grounds. This is our trial, you know, to define who we are as what our character is as our being, so to speak. And so I think that this episode's a good reminder that, you know, without memories, without loss, without pain, without suffering, you know, you don't grow. You don't understand why it's necessary to avoid suffering. And that's why we try to share those experiences with other people, so that they don't have to go through it if they can empathize with us enough. But for those that can't, unfortunately, you know, it's like, well, I'm really sorry if life has to teach you the hard lessons that it decided to teach me at such a young age, because it changes you. And I mean, hopefully for the better, but my life was not a fun road to go through, and I don't recommend it. I mean, if you want to start where I'm at now, that's probably a good starting point. But to go through the first 32 years... Anyway, that's it. You know, we have memorials on this show, so it's not like, you know, I'm BSing anybody here. I mean, we're not totally fake, but at the same time, we don't want to be all, you know, sentimental all the time. It gets in the way of discussion, unfortunately. All right,
well, so I liked how this episode where there was the character who like blotted out his arm, right? And he was like, I don't want to go back to that. For me, I was thinking there was going to be this whole reveal that he was the one that started the whole thing, and the names he blotted out were his children because he had them executed for going against his ways.
That would have been an excellent way for the episode to load out too, dude.
Wow.
Oh, dude, I thought the way it ended was even better. Because as somebody who regularly has to restart sometimes and remember who they are, sometimes you're like, I don't think anything good is going to be on the other side of that memory. If I go and talk to people about where I've been, I'm pretty sure it's just going to be all horrible. And when he finally got his memory back, he was like, no, I just loved them and they were amazing and I lost them. And that sucks. And yeah, that absolutely does suck. But like, for it to not be this big convoluted plot, for him not to be an instigator, for him to just be a pawn in the greater game, that was awesome. Because like, a lot of writing these days is always trying to get that big reveal, that big twist. And for you to not, that's a huge twist in and of itself. And I loved that. I loved knowing that this was a human suffering. And that person's suffering was unexplained, but he had found a way to cope. But then, when he finally remembered what he was coping over, he was like, nope, I was wrong. If you can get your memories back, you should get your memories back. And that's wild because, I don't know, I'm so used to being like, no, just suck it up, Buttercup. Nihilism is the only way through. and for them to finally take a shot at nihilism and it actually land in a wholesome way.
Yep.
Pretty cool. Pretty great.
Yeah,
absolutely.
No, I'm really happy with how this
Yep.
episode turned out.
Anyone have any final thoughts on Strange New Worlds this week?
Finally getting to see an Enterprise do some Need for Speed driving, like, that was amazing, but also made complete sense why only somebody who forgot the rules would do that.
Yeah,
Because I never
I'm gonna
thought
be,
about, lasering your way through an asteroid.
yeah, I'm gonna be that guy that
Nostalgia
like I think
was
some people read into the limitations of the technology when the original series came out, and they read into the Star Trek is about long and slow battles, and it's like that's not realistic to space combat is going to be rapid and quick, like the Expanse I think really nails what actual space combat will probably feel like, even if it looks like Star Trek ships. It's not gonna be the all right, fire phaser 1. All right, recharging. Fire phaser 2. It's just not like.
Yeah, I mean, look, back in the day when.
I think back in the day that was considered like fast. I think that's what they because think of the perspective. How fast could your car go? Well, 100 horsepower on a car that weighs, 80,000 pounds was pretty fast back in the day. Now, freaking a Prius would outrun that, like, without even trying. So I don't think that the perspective on how the show was done in the 60s is entire, because in TNG it got a little bit faster and a little bit more exciting, and then by the TNG movies, the Enterprise E is doing all kinds of like neat, bank churns and exploding warp cores and all kinds of battles. And then of course it's like it's as we understand the universe around us and we explore, with what we can see from our telescopes and whatnot. It's like, of course, as the science changes, the show has to adapt to the new understandings of stuff. Now, of course, that might mean making ships, black ovals at some point, which someone else can do that. I decided to go traditional, space naval, what was that show? Space battleship style. That's what I did for Galaxia. So, yeah, it is cool to see. I like seeing the Enterprise be badass. I like seeing it do those cool things. That's why I liked Picard season 3. Giving the D her glory. It was awesome, and it's. Yeah.
I feel like it's what Gene Roddenberry imagined, and then went to go play with the tech and was like, let's pull it back.
Star Trek 2 is proof positive that Trek needs some action. Star Trek 6 is an amazing, philosophical exploration that also has a really cool, battle sequence at the end that has high stakes and like, against all odds. Like there's so much. But of course, Roddenberry tried to torpedo Star Trek 2 because he had this stupid time travel script to save JFK, and it was like, and he went out of his way to say that, oh, it's bad, but then in the end realized, oh, wait, more people are into Star Trek now? Well, that means the delivery method has to evolve. It has to change. It can't just be. And here's the other thing. If we go back to Return to Form TNG style Star Trek like all the time, I don't see it making more than one season before legacy fans start going, we've already done this before. And I say that because Strange New Worlds hasn't really done a whole lot of Strange New Worlds. I mean, this
might be the first Strange New World.
This was the first episode for Strange New World.
We've gone to a new world every year, every episode so far. First, we went to that Klingon pirate world and learned a little bit about that one.
That
Then
was
we went
technically
to
a Strange New World.
the Ilarians world. and we saw Pike try to do that
Alright,
one.
alright.
It didn't work out, and then now we're on this other new world.
Okay,
Like,
all right. Credit where due. You're right.
worlds,
You're right.
really.
We have been to Strange New Worlds. It's just some of the plots. You know, we need to get more originality, and we're this week
I
Spock's
think
going to be
with
separated into two Spocks, one Vulcan and one human. Like we have. Oh, I feel like we've seen this twice already. We saw it once in the original series with Kirk getting a transporter accident, splitting his personality in two, and then we saw it again in Star Trek Voyager, splitting B'Elanna from her Klingon heritage, and
the third time with Riker, and on to DS9.
kind of. So,
Kind
well, yeah,
We
transporter.
got Tom Riker, and we got
Yeah, I would argue it could be worse. We could be getting another Tuvix.
Oh man, are they just gonna imply that Spock is Tuvix to justify Janeway's? Oh boy, if that happens, oh. Now I am open to being surprised because yeah, the latest Strange New Worlds episode was solid. I mean, it was exactly what I felt, very original series. It wasn't too cheesy. I know some people complain about Ortegas, back talking Spock. Okay, first of all, correct me if I'm wrong, but Spock is lieutenant right now, correct?
Yep.
Okay, so is Ortegas?
Yep.
So the same rank. Okay. Even in command positions, I have seen this firsthand many times. Look at John grinning. Many times, if you are the same rank in a command position, the authority thing only comes down to doing your job. And Ortegas was doing her job by giving Spock pushback and saying, "No, bad idea." She does not have to respect him in the same manner because even though Spock is in command, she just has to follow his orders. They are the same rank. They're allowed to be more cordial even on the bridge in front of subordinates. Yes, they do this in the Coast Guard all the time
This is
and
how
the
rank
Navy.
structure is reinforced. When two lieutenants can talk like bros, good. That means that the command influence is working, that the lieutenant pool is all lieutenants and they all respect each other as lieutenants. But Ortega's pushback wasn't like, "You're an idiot, Spock. I should have been given that chair. You don't know what you're talking about." It was like, "No, as a pilot, this is the wrong thing to do. Fix yourself." And Spock was like, "All right."
Yeah,
Like,
that's why...
Spock was like, "I've never been a helmsman. I don't know. Thanks for telling me. Cool. Next step." Because that's what logic dictates. Logic goes, "I'm getting pushback. Are they right? Are they smarter than me? Take it as advice."
It's people are calling this as disrespecting Spock, and I'm starting to think that no, this is Spock through the eyes of millennials and Zoomers. This is how Spock has come across. I mean, this is how you guys saw Spock growing up when I was raving about Star Trek. And so it's more about, getting that perspective out. I don't agree. I agree that Nimoy Spock can never be replicated. And I'll be honest, I don't want it to. Just like I don't want someone to try to replicate a serious Shatner. It just doesn't work. If you're gonna be Captain Kirk in a serious level, you gotta take a little bit of what he is at his core, and then you gotta bring your own thing to it. And that's why I think Paul Wesley's working well. That's why Chris Pine worked well. That's why, even James Cowley, who did Star Trek Continues, he's actually got an entire replica set of the original series bridge in Ticonderoga. So Eddie Arndt writes in, "What's up, guys? I'm a little late to the party. I'm still liking Strange New Worlds." Hey, yeah, we were just actually talking about that. We gave our ratings in the chat, so if you want to give yours overall, and we'll come back to it because I think unless does anybody else have anything to say on Strange New Worlds this week?
No, I'm just excited for next week.
Yeah, I'm saying that I for the first time when it comes to Trek, I'm actually cautiously optimistic about the future.
I would go so far as to say I'm actually optimistic. Like, I am willing to throw caution to the wind on this next episode because of these first three.
Okay. I mean, look, I really, really hope that you're right.
Me
You
too.
know,
Me too.
I really hope it. It's like, you know, like I'm just sitting there, like I know when, you know, I start streaming the episode, as I'm clicking the button, I'm just going to be sitting there going, please be good, please be good, please be good, please be good, right?
Till the last scene.
Yeah, or at least until something good happens, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't like having to start every episode with that mantra, but I have liked how every episode has got me out of that mantra within the first 3 minutes.
Yeah, and I mean, you know, I actually did really like what they did with Ortega's character at the beginning of this, where she was all prepped and all hyped for an away mission. She was gonna get to go, you know, down to a planet and explore and be what she signed up for. And then they're like, "Yeah, bad news. We need you on the ship."
But again, look at the leadership example
No.
of Anthony Mount's character, Pike, because he's the one that walked down to her, knowing how much she was excited, and said, "I have to bench you because I'm captain. I know this is gonna suck. I'm gonna be the one responsible for delivering the bad news.
Yep.
And I'm gonna try to sugarcoat it because I'm a good person. You're a good person, and I know it's not gonna work because I know how much you wanted this." And I understand if you hate me for it, but I'm the captain, so I'm the one you're supposed to hate. Don't blame anybody else. It's my fault. I chose.
Right.
And
I mean,
she's like, damn it. But she
contained it, you know?
Yeah.
You could tell her heart was broken over it, but was she a proper officer in the moment? Yes. And that's what makes the difference, right? I mean, like I said, personally, the only reason why I can't give this episode a 7 is only because, there's one decent helmsman on the ship? Right? Like, that's my one problem, right?
That was actually pretty explained. It wasn't that there was one decent helmsman. It's that they knew that they were going to be flying around this asteroid field, and Ortegas was the one guaranteed equipped. And it
could have
was
been a recent transfer season, and all the other, you know, experienced expert level 3 qualified helmsmen might have just transferred off, and she's still training more. And then there aren't any. I mean, you know, I don't know how rotations
I guess
work.
that
That's the one thing that Star Trek has never ever explained or established, is how crew rotations and assignment billets work. Like 7 years. 7+ years on the same starship with the same crew. Now, on the one hand, I can buy that as a necessity. You get your ship, you're going to be there for like at least 5 to 10 years because you're going out for a good while before you come back. But I don't know, maybe different ships have different billet systems, because like the way it works in the Coast Guard was like, for ships, it's 3 years for enlisted, 2 years for officers, typically, unless they're in restricted duty, which is 1 year for officer, 2 year for enlisted. And so, you know, you only get, like, it's like right as you finally get an expert on your job on the ship, you get transferred. And, you know, in my position, you were likely going back to land. So it's...
Yeah, that would be an awesome one, because, like, that was the big thing about the Marines, was when we had... Like, if you were deployed, technically your whole 2 years, you would do it for 2 years. You'd get sent to Japan for 2 years, then you'd go get another billet for 2 years. But if you were stationed at like North Carolina or California Pendleton, you would have been stationed there for almost all 4 years, maybe 3 years, and 1 year in a different spot. But their whole goal about constant rotating of units, and in the grunt units, once you pick up NCO, they send you to a whole different unit, because they don't want the lance corporals that you grew up with bothering you as a corporal. Instead, they want you to just go get new lance corporals so you can keep changing. And so their whole plan was rank, right? Like, if you hit a certain rank, that's when you get moved. And that whole point was so that it's not about who's in that job, it's about the rank in that job. And anybody with that rank should be able to do that job accordingly. And I think that's something that Star Trek could technically do, but it's also like one of the hardest things to do in modern media, because you'd have to recast roles regularly. And I don't think anybody wants to pay for that.
No, probably not. All right, we've already transitioned now to DS9 because I thought
All
that's
right.
what we were going to set up for. So first episode that we watched this week, we watched 4 DS9s because we didn't really have anything this week to fill, and we just decided that it'd been a minute since we done 4 whole Deep Space Nines. So the episode Destiny from Season 3. A team of Cardassian scientists comes to visit the station to help set up a subspace communications relay in the Gamma Quadrant. Suddenly, a Vedic named Yarka wants to speak with Sisko. He brings a warning from the prophets and advises to refuse Cardassians access to the station. He refers to Takor's third prophecy, which tells of 3 Vipers, the Cardassians, who return to their nest in the sky, Deep Space Nine, which ultimately leads to the destruction of the Celestial Temple, the wormhole. Sisko and Kira dismiss it at first, since only 2 Cardassian scientists are coming. But when a 3rd Cardassian scientist arrives, Kira begins to give the prophecy credence. With more and more of the predictions are coming true, Sisko must make a choice: his Federation duties or his role as emissary. Shout out to our new Teal. One small minor critique: you didn't mention the B plot, which is fantastic in this episode, but that's okay, we can talk about it on this one. So, John, why don't you go ahead and go first with your thoughts on Destiny from DS9.
Dude, this is a self-satisfying prophecy story that I like. Especially throughout the episode when they keep trying to like reiterate the prophecy and tell you how obviously it's the Cardassians, how much they're sure that it's the 3 Cardassians are the 3 Vipers, all the way till the end when Kira Nerys is like, wait a minute, the 3 Vipers were the comet. The comet was on its natural trajectory, and then when we broke it, we turned it into 3 Vipers. So technically the prophecy was all satisfied. We just for sure thought it was people. And
yeah.
it's like, that's a lot of prophecies. A lot of prophecies throughout all of our stories and children's books are like, there's one hero who's going to pull the sword from the rock, and that's the king, and that's how we know they're the king, because they pulled the sword from the rock. And it's like, that's not a good way to pick a system of legal government.
No, I've always
And this
preferred
one is.
watery tarts distributing swords personally as a system of government. I mean, that's my thing, but you know.
Well, I mean, I would rather trust a blacksmith than I would a rock. Like, little known fact, Lady of the Lake is actually a blacksmith, not just a random woman swimming in the water. Bogs are where they grabbed ore or iron ore. And then from there, they were able to actually smelt and build swords, and that's where the Lady of the Lake is actually just a blacksmith.
Yeah,
and
it would be a priestess of Cariadwin, which it was the Celtic goddess of smiths. So, and the flame. So there you go, King Arthur, giving a woman's job to a rock.
Yeah.
But, like, honestly, okay.
I do like the Defiance nickname, the Sword of Stars. I think that's pretty cool.
Yep. Yeah, right? Like, I think I found my ship's new name, right?
Yeah.
You know? But, look, this is how you do prophecy stories properly, right? Is, you know, we have everybody believing one interpretation, but it's actually another one. And it sets an important precedent for the series going forward that while these prophecies may be true, they may not play out the way you think they're going to play out. So it's really important to pay very close attention to what's going on and be open to the possibilities. And that might be the most important piece of that whole thing. I will also mention the B plot. I thought was really great that we had some Cardassian, shall we say, lore drop. especially, like, this is a new version of O'Brien's suffering that we have not yet seen.
I know.
We've had O'Brien suffer by being tortured. We've had O'Brien suffer by being poisoned. Now we've got O'Brien suffering by really awkward situations involving a species that he despises flirting with them.
Yep. By attracting a Cardassian female just simply by being an assertive and skilled engineer. Like, hey, I mean, at least you know that the attraction was genuine. It wasn't because, oh, she liked your hair, or apparently pale humans were gonna be her thing. No, she liked she liked his personality. And I mean, that's, that is one of the keys. It's not the only key to attraction. Some people need that physical attraction. That's fine. You got to figure out your balance, but don't prioritize. It is my recommendation anyway that you prioritize personality over physical silliness.
I mean, look, personally, I've always felt that, attractiveness opens the door.
Yeah.
Right? But you need to then take a look at what's inside before you decide whether you're going to step in. Right?
I think it's funny. That's where you guys took it. This is probably Star Trek's most honorable trait, is like putting real life situations, flipping them on their heads and making you care.
Yeah.
Like, this is the most common thing that like female Marines used to complain about. As soon as they got good at their job, or as soon as they even showed up at their duty station, they were getting either mistreated for being female or hit on for being hot. And that's where O'Brien got both. Starts out getting mistreated for being a male idiot, then gets hit on for being an assertive genius. And that's the most common thing in like what I experienced in the military with when it came to like females joining the ranks or intermingling of the sexes. And it's really funny to watch it in real life and be like, yeah, I knew Star Trek was always doing this. I knew Star Trek could actually show you both sides of the same issue and show you why both people are in the wrong. Like, one, she was prejudiced for thinking that all male engineers are idiots. And two, he was prejudiced because she was Cardassian and he wasn't paying attention to him, like, leading her on in any way.
Yep.
Because he wasn't paying attention, because he was busy trying to do his job, and he thought she was busy trying to do her job. But obviously, like, emotions do exist. People do have general attractions to each other, even if they're like, no, I would never date them. It's like, okay, fine. But why would you never date them? Because you thought about all the things you don't like about them? Because somebody else probably thought about all those things and was like, yeah, I will date them. And you guys probably all three work in the same office. Yeah. And now everybody's got different reasons for doing different things with each other. And that's how life works. But Star Trek did that in a B plot, and it was cohesive. And that's like, that to me is all the proof that I need when it comes to yelling at like all these other writers that are coming in, these new age propagandists saying, we know that Star Trek has always been male dominated, patriarchy forever. It's like, nope. There's an episode right there. There's perfect proof that they knew what they were talking about. They knew about the issues of the society they lived in, and they knew how to present them to you without bulldozing your face over and saying you're dumb for not liking these people. Yep. Like, instead, they're like, no, this is just an issue. And you guys came up with it from your opinions and saw it as your way, and I saw it my way.
And we're both right.
None of us are wrong.
Yeah, and I mean, there's another piece of this episode I thought was also very important to note. This is the first time we see non-military Cardassians.
Mm.
And it turns out they are just as approachable as any other denizen of Deep Space Nine. And I think that was super important to do, to show the Cardassian people as a nuanced people, right? That not all of them are, evil space lizard people, that they're as varied as anybody else, right? That, they were sitting there going like, yeah, honestly, we came here because we wanted to try some Bajoran cuisine, right? Like, we wanted to try the local flavor. It's very sweet of you to prepare Cardassian dishes, but we kind of wanted to try something different, right? And, I've had those meetings, right? I've gone, I've worked overseas at like, various places, and I'll there was one time I was in Hong Kong, and the guys there brought us, like American style takeout, and we were like, thanks, but I was really hoping for blah blah blah, right? And they're like, what, you guys eat that stuff? And I'm like, yeah, man. I mean, when I'm at the local, I'm at the place to get this kind of stuff. I'd rather try local. So what did they do? They, we basically got in and went to a noodle shop down the street, right? Like, it was kind of awesome, right? And just completely local flavor. But I've had that happen, and I thought that was adorable that they did that, right? I thought it was adorable that after the formal, everybody in their prim and proper dress uniforms and everything, everyone breathed a sigh of relief and was like, yeah, can we just like hang out now and like do stuff,
Yeah, and not only like, can we just do stuff now, but I love that it's taken 3 seasons, because it started out, the Cardassians were the offending party, and their military is offensive, because, that's what militaries do. They offend on behalf of their country. And that is all we've gotten so far. We've gotten their spies, we've gotten their diplomats, but all of their forward-facing representation of the Cardassian Empire, those are the people that we've gotten. And you're right, as soon as we get to meet the actual individuals within the Cardassian Empire, oh, look at that. They're people too. And not just people like Cardassian type people. No, people. They understand all of the diplomacy, they understand all of the issues, but also they aren't a part of the military, so they have no military pride in their nation. And they're scientists, literally the people that are trained to explore and expand their mind. What's the first thing they want to do? Expand their palate. That's perfect writing. You can have a big bad that also has good people in it. And we've watched other episodes where we met other spies, like when Kira was kidnapped. And we saw that part where it was like, no, even some of the spies are like, no, there's a bigger game at foot. We need to change the Cardassian Empire from the inside out. We're going to fight. But they didn't act like the scientists. They still acted like spies. They didn't let Kira in on what they were doing. They kept doing their thing and kept trying to bulldoze their way through, and it was-ish working. But then when the scientists show up and they're like, this is who we are, we're happy and go lucky, look at how much growth happened. They went from trying to set up a communication beacon in the Gamma Quadrant to fulfilling a prophecy, to then, oh, we might have been a little bit racist thinking you guys were the Vipers. Glad we didn't let you know that that's what we thought. Even though they were pretty sure that this was all just a giant plot to ruin Deep Space Nine, Bajoran supremacy, all of that, all a fight, they didn't let it come out because they were professionals. They didn't let it out outside of their office because they were professionals. And then when they were wrong, they didn't have to worry about anything because they weren't busy being an ass the whole time. They didn't have to apologize because nobody knew that they were in their head wrong, in their head being mean, but they kept it in their head. And in their outward appearance, were nice, respectful. And then when it turns out they were wrong, they're like, okay. Cool.
And you know what was even better, I thought, at the end? When Cisco goes to meet with Vedic Yarka. The guy who played Vedic Yarka, for the record, is one of my favorite actors of all time.
Mine too.
But,
yeah.
He's one of the best character actors I've ever met. The dude, and he Cisco turns to him and is like, so tell me more of these prophecies. Like, what else is coming up? What's coming down the pipe? Like, tell me the story. And, that to me showed it wasn't just that he was willing to accept the fact that, hey, yeah, I'm the emissary. I got to deal with this sort of stuff now, right? But he was willing to be receptive to the idea that there may be something more to this religion than just the hokum that he's always been taught to believe it to be. Now he's willing to say, you know what? There might be something here. Let's take a look. It doesn't hurt to listen to people. And Yarka tells a good tale, right? Like, you know, this guy's a good storyteller at the very least. I'm going to sit down and listen to him because why not, right? And I think that's great. This ends on such a positive message for everybody, right? You know, the Cardassians and the Bajorans have a newer understanding, right? We have communication now across the you know, we've built a communication bridge, if you will. And everybody involved grew a little in very positive ways. And that's wonderful. You know, like, it was one of those just this once, everybody got away with something good.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, moving on, because we got to get moving on. Profit motive, where DS9 can flex its ability to do fun episodes, yet still teach a very poignant message. Man, I think we'll be lucky if we get to the last 2 episodes. Quark and Rom get a visit from a rather strange acting Grand Nagus Zek. He shows them a book with the rewritten rules of acquisition to include rules like, if they want their money back, give it to them. And Latinum tarnishes, but family is forever. Disgusting. Isn't concerned anymore about profit and devotes his life to charity. Barf. Quark is worried and tries to find out what is wrong with Grand Nagus, especially since he suspects Zek will be thrown off the Tower of Commerce, and he and Rom with him when he presents the new rules. Meanwhile, Bashir is nominated to the prestigious Medical Carrington Award. Bashir thinks he's too young to be a serious contender and tries not to pay too much attention to it. To his dismay, the subject is constantly brought up. However, yeah, that B-plot's weak. I don't really want to touch on it too hard unless there's...
Yeah, the only piece I want to add is this episode was actually directed by Rene Auberjonois, Odo.
Yeah.
So, yeah, he was the director on this one. So that's kind of cool.
Yeah, that is. A B-plot is what it is. Not all B-plots need to be super great. This one I thought was just, I guess, dealing with...
wholesome.
Huh?
Wholesome. It's dealing with pride.
Yeah.
Like, especially in a position where, like, he's getting a chance to be awarded the most prestigious award in his field, and he knows for a fact he's not worthy. And he has to remain humble, despite everybody giving him all of these reasons to get proud, get hyped. And in the end, he was right. And that still sucks. Like, it's a lot of that Dewey sitting on the table saying, I expected nothing, and I still feel like this. Or I'm still disappointed, right? He expected to lose, and he was still disappointed because he's a person. It's like the B-plot wasn't heavy, but it was still good. It was still quality, and still, especially like in checking ego. Like, he had all the reasons to get hyped and then have a bigger fall. And instead, he was like, no, I'm not going to get excited. I do understand why you're excited, but it's there. But I don't know if you guys saw my pun in the chat, but this episode, Grand Nagus was negged so hard he went positive.
Yes, that was, yeah, no, this is definitely a good, you know, this again, another timeless piece here, from Deep Space Nine that just straight up, slaps overall, dealing with the ever, you know, the concept of greed versus, you know, capitalism versus communism, socialism, whatever. And it really does a good job of exploring both sides of the argument, but also pointing out the flaws of both arguments as well. In that, you know, Quark points out that greed is you know, necessary as a driving force, and I think that on the one hand he's right, but I think we need to expand our thinking on what our understanding of greed is, because the idea that greed only applies monetarily is entirely false. It does apply monetarily. It applies with, I say, every aspect of life.
Yeah, you can be greedy about how many friends you have.
Gluttony. Yeah. gluttony. It is a form of greed.
I'm greedy for knowledge. I freely admit it.
So there's certain aspects of it that, you know, it can be directed into good things, and it can be used as a force for good. But it depends on how it's done. And so, of course, you know, Quark tries to make the capitalist argument of, oh, well, if we don't have incentive or ambition, people won't, you know, do things. You know, if we pay people more, they'll get lazy. And it's like, no, you're wrong. You know, happy workers are productive workers. That's what...
Well, educated workers.
Yeah. And that's what...
If somebody knows why they're doing their job, they're going to be more willing to be that cog in the machine. But if you just keep calling them a cog and never tell them what the machine does in entirety, yeah, they're going to want to do nothing. Because that's a lot of what Quark is pointing out. He's not talking about greed in this sense of like capitalism is good because the more capital I have, the better off I am. No, he's talking about it in terms of like the more I have, the more I can pay to have more. The more I have, I can invest in better technology, in better growth, in all of these things. And I think that, like, I also think that the celestial beings are onto the right thing, because like they're like, you guys don't need to constantly be fighting over things, right? Like there are resources in the universe, and you have the technology to give everybody one of everything. And then Quark's point to that is, yeah, but when everybody has one of everything, what next? And they're like, well, be fine. And he's like, yeah, that's easy for you because you're not linear. You're fine all of the time, every of the time. But the rest of us, we're fine for a few hours and then we get hungry again. We need something to satiate us. And I think like this whole episode fights that, because there's the B plot where he is told, no, you deserve the award. You're going to win. And he's like, no, I don't deserve the award because that's not how that award works. I'm not going to win. Chill. And everyone's like, you're going to win. You deserve it. You deserve it. And he's like, I don't deserve it. The rules are the rules. And I know what they are because I'm the one in the field. I know I don't deserve it. And they're like, no, but you do. You do, because you're such a great guy. You deserve it. And that's what like the Celestials are saying to Grand Nagus is everybody's a great guy. Everybody deserves it. And then Quark's like, no, some people are good, some people are bad, but everybody needs to be able to be who they are so that we can all be ourselves against each other. So we can all see ourselves in each other and outside of each other. If we all are just one, there's nothing. We're all just one thing.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I don't necessarily want to use the word capitalism here because I think we need a little bit of a broader definition here. I'm going to go with incentive-based economics. Because I think that's more of a broad enough term to encompass what we're talking about, right? Like, capitalism taken to the nth degree is bad. Incentive-based economics as a concept is not a terrible thing. And I would argue that humanity does need incentive-based economics to proceed forward. Whether that looks like, you know, modern day capitalism or whether it looks more like a more ethical version of capitalism, I'm not going to say. I'm going to say that, you know, we have that. We also have, yeah, and I mean, look, the Bashir plot, I think, even goes deeper in that, you know, mentally, Bashir knew he shouldn't win. Despite him being a great guy and despite him feeling probably pretty jazzed that everybody around him thinks that he's worthy of that, right? But, you know, emotionally, he definitely did want to win, right? And you feel that at the end of the episode when, you know, Dax goes, you know, you're handling this well, and he goes, no, believe me, I'm not, right? And that was the perfect way to put it, because, you know, look, we've all had that happen to us, right? We've been up for something, and everybody around us has been like, oh, dude, you've got this. You got this on lock. There's no possible way it's not going to go your way. Yeah. And it doesn't. And it's sad, and it sucks. But knowing that everybody else feels that way about you is a wonderful thing to take away from it, right? And, you know, in a lot of ways, knowing how much the Ferengi on the station care about Zek despite what's happened to him, also rings true too. The A plot and B plot mirror each other rather nicely in this episode, and there's a kind of a nice symmetry to it. And I mean, listen, you want to have a fun episode or like a fun snippet, man? Quark talking to the prophets is friggin' awesome. It's probably one of the funniest moments in Deep Space Nine we've gotten to this point.
And his threat is the most punishing ever.
Yeah.
If you keep taking us and changing us, all of us are gonna keep
that. We also
showing
have
up and asking why. Like,
I think it even goes deeper.
You know what, Negus can be fine.
In that,
send him back.
You know, yeah, mentally, like, all right, you know what, forget this. Bashir Get out of knew here. He shouldn't win.
And
despite
like,
him being a great guy, and
to have
despite him
Celestials
feeling
make a mistake
probably
is so hard. Look at Marvel. Look at how many times they tried to make their celestial beings human, capable of failure. But then look at how Star Trek did it. Oh, these people don't experience linear time? What's the difference? What is the difference? And what's the one punishment Quark had up his sleeve that they knew they didn't want? Everybody's coming to talk to you. Like, you're just going to get on the call center. And trust me.
How many Ferengi do you want?
Answering his phone.
Yeah. How many Ferengi do you want asking you about your car's extended warranty, right? Like,
yeah,
and
exactly.
that's exactly what he threatened. He didn't threaten them with the loss of their life because they didn't have any perception of it. He threatened them with inconvenience.
Yep.
Which is such a minor threat until it's Chinese water torture and it's just slow dripping you into oblivion.
I mean, can you imagine the headache Sisko would have watching all these Ferengi ships lined up at the wormhole?
Especially as the emissary, because you know they would reach out to him and be like, dude,
stop
can you tell them that we don't have an extended warranty? Yeah. He didn't purchase a car. And he's like, no, you know they're just ruining your life because you ruined theirs, right? And they're like, no, we don't.
Like, just imagine the backlog of like Ferengi ships just all in a straight line, right?
Dude, imagine Quark's excitement, except he wouldn't be excited because he'd be the one Ferengi changed still.
Yeah, exactly, right? Also, I love Rom at the end of this. He's like, dude, I'm still a Ferengi. Like, of course I embezzled from the company.
I love that too, because Rom's that like C plot. Rom is like, dude, I'm not the guy that runs the show. I'm still one of you. I don't know how to run it. I'm not a good leader, but I do know all the rules. I do know that there are certain things you just kind of do when you get the chance.
Yeah, like I know how the game's played, bro. You know,
I'm just not good at it.
Yeah, that was great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That whole episode, like this whole 4 episodes were really fun.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, but now it's time to get to another exciting tale of O'Brien must suffer.
Bro, O'Brien's going through it. His family had to leave the station because they were bored out of their gourd. And since they left, like, he has no home to go to, and suddenly he's seeing himself, and rather than being able to be like, this is awesome, he's like, I gotta save the ship again.
Well, yeah, well, look, I mean, every time he time jumps, he winds up, you know, in some sort of brutally abused fashion, right? Like, it's just perfect. You know, because it's like, now time itself is attempting to torture O'Brien.
Yep.
I mean, you can't ask for more torture than that, right?
Yep. So, real quick, storyline. While a Romulan delegation arrives on the station, Chief O'Brien gets an accident. A plasma conduit blew out, but Bashir thinks it's not serious. The Romulan delegation wants information about the Gamma Quadrant, and especially the Dominion, just as was agreed in the cloaking device agreement. But no matter how much they try, Sisko and Kira just can't seem to satisfy their needs. Meanwhile, a group of Klingons has also arrived. Chief O'Brien tries to convince Quark to put up a dartboard in the bar. Suddenly, he gets a hallucination of himself talking to Quark about the Klingons, damaging one of his holosuites, and passes out. When his vision comes true, both Bashir and Dax can't find out what exactly is wrong. Then O'Brien gets another vision. He soon realizes that he experiences things that are about to happen in the near future, and that they aren't of the pleasant variety. Shout out again to Arnu Teal for a fantastic synopsis of Star Trek DS9 Season 3, Episode 17, Visionary.
So, we just recently finished discussing an episode about prophecy, and here we see how the sausage is made, right? Because O'Brien thinks things are going to play out a certain way, and they don't always. And if it wasn't for the fact that other crew members were ready for this from, past experience dealing with prophecy, they would have been in real trouble.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. This is a bit of a sillier episode. The way it resolves is kind of could have used a better explanation for how they got that.
It's the paramount of O'Brien must suffer. Literally, he could see the future and just had to die anyways, so his other future self could go back in time and try again.
Yeah,
Yeah.
For a bit, it's O'Brien, with extra lives, and then it turns into, by the end, it's O'Brien must suffer because he's got to be the one to die, and then it's
O'Brien must suffer, but with extra steps.
Yeah. Oh, man. Talk about gaslighting Romulans. Man, what a bunch of just pains in the asses these Tal Shiar shitheads are. I mean, man, they really give Romulans a bad name, I tell you what. I just,
Implying that Romulans have a good name?
Well, in Star Trek Online they do. Thankfully, thanks to the destruction of Romulus, a lot of them went through a very humbling phase and then started to seek out friendship with the Federation and Klingon Empire. And so, it's nice to see Romulans that want to build a peaceful Romulus. But, of course, the Tal Shiar got shit all over that, too. Yeah. No, I mean, there's some... With Nemesis, there's Romulans that come to the Enterprise's aid in Nemesis. And, I mean, in Balance of Terror, that was an honorable fight that ended in honorable conditions. And so it's Romulans, as far as adversaries go, are definitely more preferred than, I don't know. I think I like them better than the Cardassians, personally, but...
I don't know. I'm enjoying keeping up with the Cardassians.
Yeah, totally. John, what'd you think of,
The Romulans, for me, I don't know. They've always been like the KGB minus everything else. Like, they don't have the traditional, like, Russian communism attributed to them or any of the other parts of the KGB except for their expertise and their ability to infiltrate and their discretion and stuff like that. So, like, for the Romulans in this episode, I don't know. I like that they're not friends. Like, I like that Starfleet isn't magically turning every opponent from last season into their friends this season, or from last series into this series. Because, like, I do like that Orville did that, right? With some of the seasons where, like...
Well, it was kind of a strange bedfellows kind of situation, right? Like...
Yeah. But even then, like, they still kept fracturing. And they kept, like, ruining their relationships, which is fun. Because, like, I feel like that's an actual, like, growing society. Because, like, America didn't make friends with Russia after World War II, even though we were on the same team. And that's how life works, is sometimes you join teams for a minute, and then you're still going back to your team, and they're going back to their team, and those two teams have beef, right? And that's what I like about the Romulans. That's also what I like about the Klingons. Like, when you're constantly asking for growth, it's hard not to hear or have the writers hear that they mean that they want everybody to eventually be good friends. But it seems like Star Trek never actually tried. They never tried to make everybody hunky-dory. They never tried to just make it all work. Instead, they're like, here's Worf, a Klingon who grew up in a human colony and knows more about humans than he does about Klingons, and then learned about being a Klingon and became a human Klingon hybrid, even though he's full Klingon. Or here's Spock, half human, half Vulcan, and here's the difference between the two families as you can see them. But they're not like, no, the Vulcans just automatically took half of Starfleet, and then the humans took the other half, and then they kept dividing as more people joined in. And I like that. I like that even in this episode, the tension from all of the other series still could exist, but you're not sure. And that's really fun.
Yep. All right, moving on to our final DS9 episode. Of course, that was Distant Voices. The storyline. Quark introduces Altovar, a Lethian, to Dr. Bashir. He wants to buy biomedic gel. Being a restricted substance, Bashir rebuffs the request. Soon he finds the Lethian breaking into the infirmary. Altovar attacks Bashir with a telepathic weapon, and the doctor passes out. When he awakens, the lights are malfunctioning. No one answers their communicator, and the entire station seems to be deserted and in a state of disarray. Julian catches a glimpse of himself, notices he has gray hair, and seems to be rapidly aging. The sound of whispers and loud noises coming from the bar sends Julian where he finds Quark afraid and trying to hide. Quark mentions someone is going to kill them all and then runs for his life. The questions are, who is going to kill them? Why does Dr. Bashir appear to be aging rapidly, and why are few people still on DS9 acting so abnormally?
So, I'm going to be honest. This is an episode I typically skip on my rewatches. I just don't find this episode keeps my attention well. To me, this isn't one of the ones I particularly enjoy. That being said, a bad episode of a not preferred episode of Deep Space Nine is still not a bad episode of Deep Space Nine. It's just one I wouldn't choose to personally rewatch. But it is an interesting commentary on aging.
It's an interesting commentary on not just aging, but also people who suffer severe anxiety could probably benefit from an episode like this. Because this Bashir basically has to confront parts of himself that are dressed up as his colleagues, aka the characters that we've all been seeing. I actually posted on my 30th birthday the opening monologue to this episode because that's exactly how I had felt at the time. But now my perspective has changed so much that I'm now content with my existence. I could get squashed by a bus tomorrow. I could also live to be 1,000 years old. I don't know. The point is, we only have so much time, and it's important to understand and respect that life is precious. And I think that's part of what this episode teaches. But I also think that this episode teaches that, Bashir has a very powerful moment at the end of the episode, and while it's a slog to get there, it's very poignant. When he goes back to the... it's really amazing what he says, especially from a spiritualist perspective. Watching this episode, it's like he goes back to sickbay and has to fix sickbay, because that's not... The ops center is not his world. In sickbay, he is the boss. That is his command center. He is in charge of all sickbay operations. He is the only officer that can relieve Cisco of duty, or any command level officer of duty, for any reason that he deems as a medical threat. Now, of course, he's got to be able to back it up and whatnot. But the point is, Bashir isn't a he's an important part, but that's also the fact it's like people lose sight of themselves and their perspective in the world because they don't recognize it's like, just because you're not the number one YouTuber, for example, or the number one IT guy or whatever, it doesn't mean that you're not important in where you're at in life. And so that's where it is with me, is I'm, I'm finding where I fit in the world. And it's not necessarily doing the number one of one specific job or another. It's doing several different things that I like. I like writing. I like gaming. I like doing the stream stuff. I like watching shows. I actually do enjoy cooking, though it's definitely not my number one profession or passion. So I think there's a lot of inspiration to actually take from this episode, and so it's definitely worth watching at least once. So yeah, that's my take. I give it a 4 out of 7 because it's worth it once, but yeah, it does become skippable. Probably worth a rewatch every 10 rewatches. When you feel like it's been a while since you've seen it, that's when it's worth a rewatch. Yeah, so. What about you, John? What did you think?
I enjoyed this episode only in the sense that, like, it dealt with the mental conundrum of being a part of a system while also still being your own system. Like you said, Parker, like the fact that his command center wasn't ops, even though technically ops is the command center. And that level of like internal introspection is really hard, because a lot of like, just for Americans, the idea is like our internal ops center, if you will, is Congress. It is the president. It is our government. But in reality, like, it's not. And the actual ops center is your house. Like, that's why I like when it comes to leadership, it's all about cleaning your house, keeping your house clean. As a leader, you are the leader of your house. In the case of Bashir, that's medical. But for him, he's so used to the center of control being ops center that he forgets that, like, in your own head, you have to go back to your house. Sure, if you have the power in your head to go be Superman, to go be the president of the United States, awesome. But that's not the house that needs to be cleaned. Even in the American system, the only way this works is if we're all keeping our houses clean. If we all keep our houses clean, then our streets are clean. If our streets are clean, then our cities are clean. If our cities are clean, then our states are clean. And our nation is clean. But if we're all just constantly hoping that the people in DC will do the cleaning and keep everything clean, then we get what we've got. And that's, I think, what like Bashir was really going through, was he kept going back to ops to get the information, to get the right process, and he couldn't get it because that wasn't his house. It had nothing to do with it. It was never his space. And at the end, he learned that was okay. He finally learned, oh, it's okay to just be the medical doctor of medical and not the commander of the whole thing. That's Cisco's job. That's his billet. Give it to him. I'm going to take my spot and keep it clean. And he did that. And that was awesome. I think that's something, again, Star Trek hitting those harder real life experiences in a fun sci-fi way.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Definitely. So yeah, I guess we ended up getting through the commentary a little faster than I thought. Any final thoughts on anything else? Anyone want to discuss anything that we've talked about thus far, or?
Well, I think we've hit kind of the beginning of the back end of season 3. The distant voices and Through the Looking Glass really mark the end of the beginning of the story, if you will. We're now moving into, if we were to create an arc, if you will, of the plot of Deep Space Nine, we've now gotten through the point where things build slowly, and we're now going to start that fever pitch climb through to the next set of major story points. So, make sure your trade tables are in their upright and locked positions, because we're about to take off, man. And
I always love doing these rewatches because I forget about some of the small hints that they leave that are worth coming back to. You know, uh, you definitely want to pay attention, John, to some of the Easter eggs. If you think that something matters, there's a good chance it probably does. Because it's there's the way that they've had this all just set up. Like, this is exactly how I think Star Trek is best at its storytelling, because this gives the opportunity. See, Distant Voices is skippable for the same reason that sadly a lot of TNG episodes end up being skippable, in my opinion. Now, if you're a fan of the TNG method, I think that's fine. I think that this is a demonstration that DS9 can also do a mix of the TNG method with the overall story in it. And we still have episodes like this that pop up. Like, it's not about to go full serialized from here. It's going to be a bit more serialized than normal, which, I think seasons, 1, 2, and 3 of DS9, I think that's about the feel that we want for Star Trek Legacy. And I think that's what Strange New Worlds is trying to get to. Like, they want the self-contained episodes, but we still want some, overarching plots to keep us interested in coming back for more. I think it works now at this point as a storytelling method, because streaming is the thing now, and we can all just wait till stuff's available to watch it all at once, or watch it, whenever it's convenient. But television, I don't think, is ever going to go back to the way it was with, the weekly stuff as it is now. I mean, not everybody watches it all at once. Or not everybody watches weekly. Some people wait until, it's all available, which I get. It's easier to digest an entire story like that at once than it is a few weeks. I actually have enjoyed what it's done for our show. I like that we do this stuff once a week, that we have a reason to not only watch new shows, but watch old shows on top of that. So,
yeah.
Well, and mostly, like, for me personally, like, going back and watching a lot of these shows, especially Deep Space Nine, it's like, we know that the Marvels and the Star Treks and the Star Wars exist. But lately, it feels like they are this accidental, it's spontaneous combustion of good ideas that worked. And that's never going to happen again. And if you go back and look at it, like, it turns out that's nowhere near the case. The difference is A, people being willing to spend, B, people being willing to trust, and then C, putting in the work. Like, Deep Space Nine so far, we're what? Almost 60 episodes in? And you're just now saying, like, we're getting to the serialization overall for the rest of the series. Like, none of the Netflix shows, I can't think of a single Netflix show that's 60 episodes yet. And they almost always wrap up within 30. And by the time they wrap up, you're like, I wanted more. In some cases, you're happy with what you got, but you're not always. Whereas, like, with Star Trek, it's like, okay, yeah, it came out, like, episodically, and Corian, you mentioned, Parker, you've mentioned, there's a few episodes you're not caring to rewatch. And the only reason you did rewatch them was for this show. That's, to me, what, like, the reason why we've gotten whittled down to where we're at now is all of the executives were like, well, what if we just cut out all of those bad episodes? And it's like, no, those bad episodes are what make the good episodes better. Like people always talk about, like, you got to go through the hard times to see the good, especially in your writing, especially in your shows. You have to give us one bad episode that you know is your best attempt at almost good. And then go back to knowing what's right, doing the fundamentals, following the core. Because if you keep testing the waters, we're going to have a bunch more episodes of fun, and, 7 of them will fail, 10 of them will fail. But out of 60, that's 1/6, or that's not 1/6, it's nothing, right?
Well, I mean, look, this is the best way to look at it, and this is how I equate it. It's like alcohol, okay? You can refine alcohol down to like 98%, alcohol in your drink, and it'll get you drunk. If that's your goal, is to just get drunk, it's great. But if you want a drink that you can sit and enjoy with your friends, maybe you don't need a 90% alcohol drink.
Yep.
Maybe you only need about a 40,
Yep.
right? Maybe you need something you can sip and enjoy the nuances of the minute changes in the flavor, right? Give us a couple of glasses of wine, right? We don't, in our running through the bar, we don't want to just get one shot, get drunk, and pass out on the floor. We want to be able to sit in the bar for like 4 or 5 hours and have a couple of drinks, right? And be able to talk and ruminate on a problem.
And be able to bring in one friend that likes whiskey and one friend that likes tequila and one friend that likes vodka. And it's never a problem because the show has all of these different types.
Exactly.
Like, that's how you get word of mouth to work. Like, I can't prescribe SNW to anybody except for sci-fi fans. It's not one of those shows that bridges all of the gaps. Deep Space Nine, closer. Again, still a little bit too heavy on the sci-fi, but same thing with Star Wars. Like, that's kind of really what I want to see the new Trek do, which is find a way to bridge regular people that don't like sci-fi with the sci-fi fans and get them to intermingle. Because if you can do that, that's exactly what you're saying, Corey. You're running a bar. You're not running the distillery of Everclear.
Yep. All right.
Yeah. Well, coming down to the last 5 minutes here. That Ahsoka trailer did look pretty good, I will say.
Yeah.
I think, I see a lot of disappointed fans that aren't super excited, and I think that's why the news of Kennedy getting the axe. Is there anything we can discuss on that, Corey, openly right now, or is that do we need to?
So I'm going to say this: the fog of war is very, very heavy over this. We more or less got Pablo confirming that there is in fact meetings going on, that they are in fact pretty serious. I've seen people try to discredit the source Sparrow, saying, well, Kathleen Kennedy's in the office. And I have but this to say: yes, people often are in the office when, they're cleaning out their office for the new guy.
Yeah.
Right? When they're going to collect their things in a box. Just saying. We don't know what's going on. I am going to say that I think that Wednesday and Thursday are going to be the most interesting segments of this, Lucasfilm debacle story that we're going to get for a while. And look, I think Ahsoka's going to be pretty good. I don't know if it's going to live up to everyone's expectations, but I would say this: give it a try. Right? The worst that happens is you don't particularly enjoy the first episode and you decide not to watch it any further. But deciding to ignore it at all potentially robs you of something that could be good. So consider it. Yep,
and we will of course give our non-spoiler and spoiler takes on this show like we have with Strange New Worlds and anything that's currently viewing, and if it's raving and if it's slapping, we will let you know honestly and truthfully. And if it's not doing so great, we will let you know honestly and truthfully. But if it's Rebels with Timothy Zahn and George Lucas, then
it still could be not bad, right? I mean,
yeah. And I think all we can do is wait and see. But I want to thank everybody, whether you lurked or whether you made your presence known. Nemesis of Eden, Eddie Yarn, thank you guys for showing up. Stream Elements Bot, always good to see you there. And we want to continue to do this and grow. So please, whether you're watching live, whether you enjoy us the following day, whenever it's convenient for you, please like, subscribe, share with all your friends and family. We enjoy bringing this content to you guys, and of course we're open to suggestions, and as we grow we will start to add more shows, open-ended discussion type shows, throwback Thursday type shows, maybe even group MST3K style shows. But in order to do that, we need to keep growing. We need to get subscribers. Whether you guys, any kind of support you can get, it is always appreciated. And that's, yeah. That's all.
And thank you guys.
And yes, we thank you for your time and consideration. Other than that, I think next week we're probably going to review, we're going to go ahead and do 2 DS9s, S&W, and I think we're going to go ahead and get in on that Sound of Freedom, because be a little counterproductive against this thing if we didn't consider that movie, but it seems to be, there seems to be good reason to check it out, so.
All right, guys.
Yeah. No, and Sound of Freedom is a great way to, get our name out there, seeing as how the majority of modern media just ignores it for literally no good reason. There's a lot of pseudo justifications, but just like there's a lot of pseudo writers in Disney.
Yeah, exactly. I'm Peter York with the Ryder Brothers, and we will see you next week. This has been a presentation of the Ryder Brothers Tuesday Night Live Show. The Ryder Brothers, restoring respect into discourse.